Dr. Henson, in your experience, what are the most significant health challenges facing Black men today, and why do they go up undiagnosed or untreated?
Well, I want to take a step back, because I know it's, the question is geared towards specific diagnoses, right? But
Hmm.
to me, everything falls under an umbrella, right? And if we can address the umbrella, then we can address all the other things that fall under it, right? So for me, the three biggest issues, especially with Black men, black people, period, but especially with Black men, is spiritual illiteracy, okay? A lack of self-knowledge and a lack of self-love. And these things, these are not mutually exclusive pathologies. They work in tandem. All right. When I talk about spiritual illiteracy, I don't mean that in a religious sense. All
Hmm.
right. To me, religion is a guide to spiritual development, right? But when I talk about spiritual literacy, I'm talking about our understanding of our divine nature. All right. When the Bible says, let us make man in our image, it's not talk about in physical form, but rather in this ability to create, to manifest, right? Because we literally have the ability to change the things that happen within our bodies. All right. A lot of it has to do with a lot of the reasons why we're in such poor health is from the decisions that we
Yes.
make, not because we are intrinsically sicker people. No, in fact, we are the strongest people. When you control for all the socioeconomic differences and lifestyle differences, we are the strongest individuals on this planet. But we make bad decisions. We're exposed to bad elements, right? But we have the ability to control these things. And that's what I mean by spiritual literacy is understanding this divine power to create and manifest the things that we need and want in our lives, and to understand the interconnectedness of all things,
Hmm.
right? The interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit. This is one entity. It's not broken down into parts. That's one of the biggest fallacies of Western medicine is it breaks everything down into these individual components. No, this is a system. And this is a system of mind, body, and spirit. So to understand that, and so that we're not looking at, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna go and see about my heart and not see about my mind. Like
Hmm.
that doesn't make sense, because it's connected. If you're not
Yes.
mentally well, your cardiovascular system is not going to operate optimally. So we have to get away from that, the way that other people think. We are much greater holistic thinkers and intuitive thinkers, okay? So spiritual literacy, the biggest thing, the lack of self-knowledge, and this kind of goes into that also, not understanding that we have the power to make these changes, right? Um, um, Not being aware that uh, it's gonna take that we're greater than the individual. You see that the power that we really have is in the people, not the person.
Hmm.
So we just talked about organizing and centralizing. That to me is the first step towards greater health, right? Because people tend to move towards what the group is able to accomplish. So if we can
Right.
form the group and the
Right.
group is dedicated to improving the state of the group's health, then the individual will gravitate towards that, you know um and then I said, lack of self-love. So to me, the greatest form of self-love is discipline,
Hmm.
right? Doing things that are right for you, even if the conditions and the choices for you are not necessarily in line with what's right for you, which is how society is constructed for
Hmm.
us. Sure, we don't have the abundance of fresh produce and high quality foods within our neighborhoods, but that doesn't mean that we have to voluntarily walk into the stores that sell us poison and give them our money and eat
Hmm.
their poisons, right? So it's we still choose to do that. Sure, you can be influenced by your environment, but ultimately you're deciding on consuming these things, right? You're making these poor decisions, right? And I often hear that it's expensive to eat healthy. Sure, but you know what else is expensive? All these cigarettes that we buy over the
Mm.
course of the year, all this alcohol that we buy over the course of the year, all these sneaks that we buy over the course of the year. Just imagine if you cut that out, how much more you can invest in the most important thing in your life, your body,
Yeah.
right? We care more about what we put on our body than what we put in it. That's a personal choice. That's not a systems problem. You dig me? Sure, the system exists, but the system thrives because we voluntarily walk into its traps. So that to me is a lack of self-love.
Now, and I know I heard it in your response. What's a proactive approach we can take, especially when we feel like the system is rigged against us? So, what's a proactive approach we can take to counter some of these things that you discussed?
Yeah, well, really, it's to get proactive. I think, I
Mhm.
think, I think Black men have been the exact opposite of proactive when it comes to their health. If anything, we've been very sort of dismissive and avoidant, and that part I understand in many ways, right? We consider the historical exploitation of Black people, Black men in particular. And it goes beyond just Tuskegee. I know we talk about that all the time, but you could talk about how they built up the entire OBG field of OBGYN, off unanesthetized Black women, right? How they advanced the field of radiology off of doing these radiation experiments on Black prisoners and things of that nature. So it goes beyond Tuskegee. Um, but I do think what we need to do, and we mentioned this earlier, for one, we need to organize ourselves,
Mhm.
right? Because it is difficult for an individual to see beyond what they see on a daily, So if other brothers are able to lend a different perspective, that may assist them, So organizing each other, and having the goal be improved health. And then again, just being proactive. You have to take that. The hardest step is the first step. So you can go out there and you can search for a good provider, and you don't have to sit there just because that's the one that you were assigned or that's the one you found initially. You're not married to them. Find somebody
Mhm.
who you can engage with, who you do trust.
Yeah.
I understand there are not many Black physicians in the nation, but you can find them. We're out here, you know, and I'm building a practice. I feel like, and maybe this is just my ego. I feel like as soon as I open my door, I should be overwhelmed with patients. It's gonna be a disappointment if I had to go out there and I have to spend money marketing and all. Why? Isn't this what we need? Isn't this what we said we've been wanting this whole time? But I get it. I get the reservation. It's gonna take some time. And don't get me wrong. I'm not expecting people to trust me. I'm not saying that. I think that's one issue with medicine also. I think what I ask for from my patients is not to trust me, but at least give me the opportunity to earn your trust.
Mhm.
You see, that's what my job is. I have to, through speaking with you, through engaging with you, through you seeing better outcomes. That's how I build that rapport. So that's me having to earn it. But you have to be proactive, and I think it takes us, those who have members who we are aligned with, or if we're leaders of particular organizations, start moving those organizations to be more aware and informed about their health. I will have to be honest. I've been a bit disappointed in many of our churches because I think our churches need to do more to support and empower the Black community rather than just taking tithes. We got to be able to give that back. And I know they have to function and they have their own bills and things of that nature, but this is still a staple of the Black community. So if I can't go to the church to learn how I'm supposed to eat right and live right and exercise right, then where can I go really? You know, I've been to a lot of services where after Sunday service, we going and we eating the same poison that, we're buying out in the street. Like that we got to change that. That culture we have to change. Sunday dinner doesn't have to be fried chicken every all the time. You dig me? Like, let's come on, let's do something a little different. We want to complain about, having all these health issues, but we're not making the necessary changes to make, an improvement happen. So, I just think we have to think differently. We have to organize differently. We have to actually set goals and then hold ourselves accountable to that.
So just real quick, I'm Rashad. You're in the medical profession. That could be a powerful medical and the service industry coming together in our church, and we're going to help make a difference in that area. That's why we're partnering with you today for this conversation.
That's awesome.
Our background, we're heavy in food service in my family, and
Right.
we understand, that we can't just be, pounding down the fried chicken, the mac and cheese. That stuff is good, but that cannot be the central focus of our diets, or we're
Right.
going to have these problems that are common to African Americans.
Right.
So I'm just again grateful for this partnership, and I thank you so much. But one of the
Right.
things that you mentioned, mobilizing and coming together, trust is a big issue, especially in underserved communities. What's a practical step, or what would you suggest that, like, how, when you open your doors, are you going to draw those people in the underserved communities that do not trust, that have a family of, my dad had this, so I have that, and they're just accepting it? That mentality of acceptance, how would you break that barrier?
Yeah. So, and it's a tough one. That's why I said I always like it's in one way, I expect people to be proactive and seek counsel and, you know, hold take some accountability
Mhm.
in their health. But at the same time, I'm Black. I've been impacted by exploitive medical practices, through
Mhm.
my family. I get it. And I do, it's understandable and truthfully it's warranted. I don't expect people to trust me. And I just mentioned this. I don't expect you to, I don't think trust is something you just hand over just because somebody's talking to you with a white coat and a few letters at the end of
Mhm.
their name. That doesn't mean anything. I'm a doctor and I don't trust doctors either. I'm gonna be honest, right? Because you have to earn my trust.
Mhm.
And that's the approach I take with patients who walk in the door. Like, just give me the opportunity, give me the chance to earn your trust, right? Because I can show you better than I can tell you.
Mhm.
And for me, I do think I have enough anecdotal evidence from patients that I've counseled or have been under my care who have seen significant improvements and who would testify to that fact. So if that's what it took, and this is one of the reasons why we spoke earlier about the men's room, one of the the greatest strengths about having a group is that you see who's benefited from it. And you're like, oh man, wow, okay. They've been able to lose 20 pounds listening to this brother. Let me see what he's talking about. You come in, you listen, I'm not saying you have to engage right away. You don't have to trust right away. Just sit back, listen, just join it. Just listen, you know. Um, and so, I do think I understand the apprehension, but at the end of the day, it's us who dies because of that apprehension. At some point we have to get beyond that and extend ourselves. That's like you have people in relationships. You're in a relationship with your spouse and they cheat on you, right? And you're heartbroken and you're like, you don't want to go out there and date anymore, but you don't want to be by yourself either. So at some point you gotta get over that and go out and date again. And that's exactly what I think patients need to do with their medical providers. They don't actually date them, but if they don't, if they're not talking to you how you like to be talked to, they're not listening to you how you like to be
Mhm.
listened to you, then move on to the next one. You don't
Okay.
have to marry them just because that's who's been assigned to you, that's who's in your area, And one of the beauties about how medicine is evolving right now, they don't have to be in your physical location.
Yeah.
You could do telemedicine. If you really like somebody, but they're 2 hours away in the same state, make it virtual, right? And they have enough technology in hand. Like, one of the premier elements about the practice that we're launching is we're going to be heavy into remote patient monitoring, right? So if you have high blood pressure, if you have diabetes, if you have heart failure, if you're obese, you're trying to lose weight, we've partnered with a company that will send you devices to your home, a scale, a glucometer, a blood pressure cuff. And those devices are linked either wirelessly or through some sort of telecommunications manner, so that is linked to the computer in my office. So every time you take your blood sugar, every time you take your blood pressure, I see it right away. So let's say, for example, the last time you came to my office, I gave you, I recommended you take, two blood pressure pills, right? You start taking them, now your blood pressure is too low. We don't want that either, right? Traditionally, I wouldn't know that until you came back to my office in a few weeks or months or whatever. But now I can see it in real time.
Mhm.
I can say, Minister, listen, you know what? I think I did too much. Cut one of them off. Just take this one, see how that works. As we're trying to change whatever lifestyle choices that got you to be hypertensive in the first place, you may need a blood pressure pill, but ultimately my goal is to get you off all medication. But for now, just take that one pill off because I think the two is too much. So now we have the technology to make real-time clinical decisions, and you don't have to be in physical contact with that person.
Mhm.
So again, the issue with not having providers that you can go to or providers that look like you can be overcome by the fact that we have telemedicine in existence.
Okay. So that's a perfect segue. I know that you MetaRoots is primarily making strides in Ohio and New York. Now I'm in PA. Can I use you as a telehealth doctor, me being in PA and you being in New York?
No, because I'm not, well, I do have a license, it's not active in Pennsylvania, but
Okay.
we've all so I told you I'm from Philly, born and
Mhm.
raised. Um, and when I put MetaRoots together, it was done with the intent on going back to Philly and launching some health program in there. Really, what I'm doing, I'm fine tuning everything I'm doing here. So when I get to Philly, I've got the most perfect polished product. Philly's gonna get the best of MetaRoots, right? One way that we can overcome that from a physical standpoint is I can hire a physician that's licensed in Pennsylvania with an active license, and then we can, they'll adopt my programming, right? And then you can see them, and then we could do everything that way. But eventually, MetaRoots is coming to Philly. At the moment, no, I wouldn't be able to see you and as an official patient or be able to prescribe for you because again, the license isn't active. But that doesn't mean I can't, coordinate a workshop or speak to a group or just provide general counsel. So I could certainly do that.
Okay.
And we'd love to do that. We'd love to do that. We just talked about the programming that we're launching here. I would love to get your circle and your other connects involved in the men's room and really engage with other brothers who are going through something. Not all of us are going through the same thing. We all have different goals. We all have different challenges. But just the idea of bringing us together and say, man, somebody else on the call is going through the same thing. This is how they got through it. There's no better medicine than an example to me.
Now the men's room is active now. The group, it's like a men's forum that is active now, right?
Yeah, it's active. I mean, it's not even a formal organization. It's just what we're calling it. I can be called anything really. But the goal is what's important.
Mhm.
And and for one, that's to bring brothers together out of isolation, out of their own individual silos, and to have a and to make the mission to improve the state of our health. One other brother on the call might have uncontrolled diabetes. That's not your problem. Your problem might be, man, I'm depressed. Might be the thing. What we talk about and what we do may be different, but it's going to be, we're gonna have that group support dynamic, and you're gonna have me as a coach and a couple other providers who, can probably better guide the mental health issues. I can help guide the diabetic issues a little better. So we're bringing our expertise in a centralized location for the greater good of the organization. That's what I was talking about, to organize and centralize. We have brilliant brothers out here who are doing great things, but we just need to organize ourselves around them.
Okay. Um, okay. So, tell me more about your personal story. I know you said that you're from Philadelphia. And you just tell me more about you. I know we talked about some things offline, but let's just put it out there for everybody else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, again, I was born and raised in Philly. Actually, my upbringing was pretty unique because up until I was about 9 or 10, I lived in a really good area of Philly, Society Hill, Ninth and Pine,
Mhm,
right? Literally down the street from
mhm,
Ben Franklin's house. And it's a surprise now when I look back and I actually walk past his house. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. I used to walk past this every day to school. But my pop worked for the city, and my pop was a high school dropout. He dropped out of school 10th grade, started working for the city and recreation, and then moved up. He was a garbage collector, then the mechanical broom, and then he got to the point where he taught all the heavy equipment. So as blue collar as it could get. My mom finished high school, did some college level courses, but I think that the from my childhood, the biggest things that I could remember is after the owner sold that building, we moved around a lot. We was in Parkside Ave, Jean Erie, uh, Broad area. I lived in 15th and Carlisle, 17th and Carlisle. And then we spent most of our time Broad and Alney, right? So very different from Society Hill, like night and day.
mhm,
Um, and one of the reasons why we moved so much, and my father and my mother, they weren't together, so I would go back and forth between the two. But the reason why we moved so much was because of drugs. Every time we moved to one of these other areas, the apartment building would be flooded with drugs. And my pop didn't really, I was raised by my pop, because my mom had a drug addiction, and actually my mom passed away last year, in part because of her long time drug use, And so mental health was always a big thing, because she was doing it to cope, and that was her escape, and then that combined with some other things that she did in life, like ultimately led to her developing this rare cancer of the neck, and she passed. I mean, it was a diagnosis, and maybe less than a year she was gone. And again, that's why mental health is one of the most critical elements to me, and it is one of the most underdiagnosed and undertreated, especially in our community. Substance abuse is something that they sort of scoff at. There's no real in-depth programming that's tailored to people who are struggling with substance abuse and prior trauma. It's just like, all right, well, look, we'll give you this methadone, or we'll give you this rehab, this nursing center for a brief time, and then you're on your own. That's highly ineffective. you
mhm,
know. So I grew up witnessing that. My pop will tell you he had an alcohol addiction. And so I've been around addiction all my life. I've been around mental health issues all my life. I've seen what poverty does to your ability to access quality care. I've seen what it does in terms of uh, building in this chronic stress axis, right? We talked about stress earlier and how that how that imposes on your ability to live a healthy life. You know, so all these elements really, really created this almost like quiet fury, you know. It's like, but fortunately, I was able to harness that and leverage that to do something positive. Like that is what motivated me to be about my studies and my education. Well, that in conjunction with the fact that my pop didn't allow me to bring home C's. You know, my pop's old school. He's from the era like you get hit with anything. You know, we can't do that these days, but I wasn't allowed to bring home C's. You
Hmm.
understand? That coupled with this sort of almost this anger motivated pursuit of my education is what really launched me in this direction. And so now that I've, completed my training and so just to give you the background, so I did my undergrad at Johns Hopkins. I got my bachelor's in neuroscience and came back to Philly to get my medical degree at Drexel and then moved to New York to do my residency training in internal medicine at Cornell. So, I've been blessed I say I've been blessed to have been afforded such a prestigious miseducation. Because, these schools were great. Don't get me wrong, the training is great,
Yeah,
but the space that I'm in now is like, okay, I can use the fundamental elements of what they
yeah,
taught me in order to do something that I think is going to be far greater.
yes, yes. So you touched on mental health, and I was just talking to one of my kids about this today. Um, in the Black community, it's hard to get us to talk. What
Yeah.
what what would you suggest? How would you get a young brother to actually talk about his issues, to deal with the mental health? Because, like you said, it's a system. If your
Yeah.
mind ain't right, your blood pressure probably ain't gonna be right. I know sometimes I stress eat, that could be hurting other things in my body. So, what would you do? How would you draw someone in to address their mental
Yeah, and the challenge is discovering a way to connect with them. And I don't think that
health?
connection should be about something that's troubling them.
Hmm.
I think that connection should be about something that they find entertaining, something that they find fun, something that's non-traumatizing, you know. And then as you build that relationship, as you build that rapport, this could take time. Then you start getting into the crux of what the issues are. Because I do a lot of mentoring also, and the what I've noticed, and I don't know if it's because now the people, the youth now are a little more expressive than we were. But I remember the first year that we had our program at Cornell, so I created the Black and Latino Men in Medicine as a way of empowering underrepresented students, especially young men who want to pursue careers in medicine. We had this mentoring program that we called the Science and Leadership in Medicine program. Right, it was an 8-week program where we brought in other physicians of color to talk about their journey, and we had the students do different clinical activities like learn how to do robotic surgery, learn how to do a tourniquet, learn how to stop the bleed, things of that nature. But we surveyed them and we asked them, what do you think is the greatest limitation to your ability to advance or to accomplish whatever your goal is? And we said, is it money? Is it education? Is it, lack of support? Is it confidence? It was a few other things. The overwhelming majority of them said lack of confidence. So they admitted to lacking confidence. I found that very striking. Um, and I think that speaks to something. It speaks to how society is contrived, that is almost intentionally designed for young Black men, young Black women to feel insecure about their
Hmm.
position in this society, to feel insecure about who they are as individuals. And that insecurity is what spawns a lot of these behavioral issues, right? The lack of our, perhaps that might be the driving force in the lack of drive and motivation to do well in school, because if you're insecure about your intellectual ability, you're probably not going to try that hard because you don't want to fail, right? So I could see that connection. If you're insecure about not seeming macho, I just had this discussion with a pastor out here in Harlem who does a lot of sex education work because he's in the HIV space. He was like, what I've noticed, the one thing that no one does when they for these young men when they talk about sex is teach them how to put a condom on, right? And it's like, well, the first step is to give them condoms, but then to teach them how to put it on, right? Because in the act, you don't want to seem like you don't know what you're doing and you're fumbling around. You're like, nah, forget that, just forget it, and then they don't strap up at all.
Right.
So it's like these little nuances become much greater issues at the end of the day. And so, again, to bring it back to your question, I really think we have to do a better job in just engaging them in some fashion. It doesn't have to be around the pathology per se, because it might be insecure about talking about it. But to engage with them in a manner where now you're able to develop that trust. You've built that rapport, so now you can have the real conversation that you always wanted to have with them.
Yes. And connectivity is like is everything in life. If you can have a connection with somebody, you can get in with them, and you can go places that they will open up to you in ways that they didn't open up to other people. So that's through every walk of life, in professional space, in every space imaginable. We touched on a little bit about the church's involvement, and there seems to be a disconnect, frankly, with the church and some communities, because people think, I'm not going there to pay tithes. They're just the preacher is gonna drive around in a Benz or whatever, and so that disconnect is there. What role do you see the church playing in this, and churches and faith-based organizations in our community?
Oh man, I mentioned this earlier. My disappointment in the Black church over the years, just because I think for them to have such an influence on the community, I don't think they've really given as much back. And I mean this in its entirety, not pointing at any individual church, but just collectively, because, and I forget what the numbers were. I gave a talk at a church maybe 3 years ago, and I had the data, and the data was unbelievable how much money across Black churches come across each Sunday, right? And I was like, well, if you consider how much money gets passed through the church, and how much of that, if we just took a percentage, just 20-30% of that, and invested it appropriately, right? And then employed what I see other racial ethnic groups doing, which is group economics, right? I think the Black church is the greatest place that we can employ the concept of group economics. And then just watch that money grow. And then use the returns on that to reinvest into the community, that same community. Buy the houses. Why is that church is that church even owned by someone in that community? Why is that church not the owner of that 2-3 block radius? Right? Why does that church not have businesses set up for people? Why does that church not bring in the professionals that they have within that community to go back and teach the members of that church? This to me sounds easy. It makes perfect sense, but it just hasn't been executed. Right. And I don't, for what reason, I don't know. I don't even want to speculate, but I don't think the church has done enough in that respect. But when it comes to health related issues specifically, we talked about it. You go to church and have the most unhealthy meal. Like that to me, you have the majority of the congregation are obese. Like let's just keep it completely honest, right? The majority of the congregation is obese. Uh, Everybody's on 5, 6, 7 different pills to manage blood pressure and diabetes and cholesterol. We got kidney disease, all these things. And I'm not knocking it, I'm not judging. But the church should be the staple of what it means to be black and healthy and successful. We can talk, it's like we know everything about God except what God represents. And I would love to see more of an active role. And it starts with the church, Like you can't tell someone else how to live their life until you change yours, right? So now if the church is going to be the beacon of health, the church has to get healthy. If it's going to be the beacon of economics, then the church has to get its money right, And so it starts by cleaning up what's going on in the church. And then it's also what my biggest issue, even currently, is getting the church to be open about these advancements in medicine that we're seeing. And specifically around cannabis. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Cannabis and the natural psychedelics. All right. So the psilocybin mushrooms, the ayahuascas, the ibogas, I'm not talking the LSD and MDM and MDMA and all these other drugs. These are synthetic drugs, but I'm talking about these things that grow naturally from the earth, that are here for our benefit, right? They said, what is it? The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations, right? That's Revelations 22, verse 2, right? These things were put here for us. Cannabis was put here for us. Now, has it been abused? Absolutely. Absolutely. Do we misuse it all the time? Absolutely. But before anything, before it's a way to get high, before it's a way to make money, before it's a way that the government has used it to criminalize black people, it's a plant and it's a medicine. Before anything, we just have to learn how to use it appropriately. I mentioned earlier, anything can be a poison. I've taken care of people that die from drinking too much water, from running too much. These things are not poisons. You wouldn't say that, oh, drinking water is a poison or exercising is a poison. Like, no, but if you have an addictive habit, it doesn't matter what you pick up, right? We just have to learn how to use them appropriately. When we talk about heart disease, because this is when I'm engaged in research also, all right? I'm not just a clinician, I'm a researcher as well. I just gave a presentation in Buffalo at New York's Office of Cannabis Management 3 weeks ago. And I was talking about the cardioprotective benefits of cannabis. Because if you look at what's happening in the media, they're saying it causes heart disease, it causes heart failure. If used in certain ways, if you smoke it, sure. You smoke certain strains, sure. Smoking it all the time, and you're doing it too much, yeah. But I would tell you, if you consumed it in its raw form, it is actually one of the most cardioprotective medications that we have, because it's incredibly inflammatory. All right. It reduces insulin resistance. It reduces cholesterol levels. It reduces blood pressure. Are these not all the things that we tend to have issues with? So why are we so averse to even having the discussion about its use? Of course, we're going to be misinformed and disinformed about it because it's actually beneficial for us. It's to the powers that be. For the powers that be, they have no incentive to promote a natural therapeutic because they can't profit from it. And what bothers me even more so is that I'll get asked to come and try to convince people to be adherent to their medication. And this is by the church. I'll be asked to come in to talk about the importance of being adherent to your medication and the importance of getting vaccinated. I'm like, okay. But when I bring up cannabis, it's like, oh, no, we don't want to talk about that. So why are we supporting the synthetics, but not what God gave us? That doesn't make sense to me because there's nothing that man can create that comes remotely close to the power of God. Nothing. We just have to learn how to use it the right way. So at least let's have the conversation. I'll show you the data.
Mhm.
Let's not let belief is one thing, but if I can prove to you that what you believe may not necessarily be right, then what are we talking about? You know, so at least let's have the conversation. I get it. I get the reservation. I get it. You know, but I'm heavy into it. I'm into the research. I see what it does clinically. And you know who is benefiting most? Not Black people.
Right.
You see, as passionate as I am about improving the state of health for Black people. The overwhelming majority of people who I've certified to receive medical cannabis are non-Black people. You know, we seem to be the most resistant to it. So not only have we been criminalized the most from it, but now we're reaping the health benefits the least. Like it's wild. So I would like to see, that was a long answer about what I would like to see the church do. But you see, I have my, and the church is such a great place to be, man. I love going to service. I love the fellowship. But let's have this fellowship with a purpose, you know, beyond just getting together and chopping it up and having, you know, Sunday dinner and, you know, talking about each other, you know, whose hat looks trash this week, you know, like
Mhm.
let's do something impactful, you know.
Yes. Yes. Well, I want to say this before I open it up to you for final thoughts. At New Hope, um, our church is small in number, but we do some pretty powerful things.
I'm aware, yeah.
And we would love, and I don't want to speak from our pastor. I'll ask for forgiveness later if I am. We would love to work with you more because everything that you are passionate about, from a health standpoint, we're passionate about.
Mm,
We're open to new ideas. We understand the connectivity of the system being our body. We had connected cuisine where we connected the food to everything, to the health and all of that. So that's definitely a space that we would definitely love to partner with you in. And you have roots in Philadelphia. We would love here at New Hope to help grow those roots and expand it in Philadelphia in whatever way we can. We just hope and pray that you'll be open to us because I'm definitely, because I have already things in my mind personally that I want to talk to you about. So you will be getting a call from me personally,
please.
you know, to be counseled on some health things because me, and I know every Black man is not as open as we are to our health. There is a barrier that has to be overcome. That's where we'll work together to help real other Black men, other men in, right? To have the conversation about our health, to be vulnerable, to talk about depression and our, you know, just everything that we're going through. We need that in our community. And definitely we are commanded to be light as the church. And that's what we want to be here at New Hope. And it starts with our health, our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health. Those things all go hand in hand. So I thank you for this time. I thank you for the knowledge that you've imparted on me. I have a journey that I'm going through, and I know I keep saying it, that I benefit from this time that we spoke, that the time that I've had. This is my first time meeting you. I am appreciative of it, and I'll just open it up to you for any final thoughts that you have. We do have a Men's Day coming up. Love for you to be a part of it. But we can talk about that offline. So I'll just open it up to you for any final thoughts that you would like to have.
Yeah, sure. So I think, you know, and this is geared towards the members of the church and surrounding community, yes?
So we're going to open this up. It's going to be online. It's going to start in our church, I believe, and then it will be online. So this is going to be opened up to everyone.
Okay. Well, I think what I like to discuss really, and I'll conclude with this is, you know, there is no separation between God and science. There's no separation between religion and health, right? And I think sometimes the way we're brought up, it almost pins God and science against each other. Either believe in God or you believe in evolution, right? I'm of the belief that you can believe in both. In fact, as a man of science, the more I learn about science, the more I learn about the body, the closer it brings me to God, the more I understand God. And I think God speaks to us through science. And if we want to extrapolate some scientific findings from the Bible, for example, religion does tell us a lot about how we can best manage our health, right? Just to me, the three most powerful therapeutic modalities, religious therapeutics that I've read about from the Bible was belief, prayer, and fasting. Belief is the most powerful therapeutic that we have. In fact, in science, we have this anomaly that we call the placebo effect, where I can tell someone, you know what, I'm going to give you this pill that's going to lower your blood pressure, but give them a fake pill, a fake medication.
Mm-hmm.
If they believe enough that this pill will lower their blood pressure, you know what happens? Their blood pressure drops. So that tells you just how profound belief really is. And this is why I said, let us make man in our image. That ability to create and manifest. If I can believe that I can lower my blood pressure and it lowers my blood pressure, then the belief is the most powerful medicine that we have. Prayer. They've studied prayer from a scientific perspective. Actually, there's a study that came out not too long ago looking at Muslims during Ramadan. And they found that when they go into prayer, the way their mind changes is the same way that a person who meditates changes. Prayer is a meditative state. So all the benefits that we talk about with meditation, we talk about with prayer. This is why prayer works. We say this, right? Prayer works. And then fasting. You look at all the diseases that we seem to succumb to and that plague our communities. The heart disease is the biggest killer of all people globally. Diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, depression even, anxiety, dementia, cancer. You know, all these can be prevented by implementing a fasting regimen. In fact, I can tell you through experience, I've gotten people not only to reduce weight, but to get off all of their diabetic medications just by implementing a fasting regimen. And if you recall from the Bible, what Moses, before he received the second set of tablets, ascended Mount Sinai, 40 days, 40 nights, without any food. He fasted before he was blessed with the 10 Commandments, right? Jesus fasted 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness before he was blessed with what his mission would be. David fasted, right? We have all these examples of fasting in order to achieve a goal, or what they didn't know what their goal was going to be, but you know, it came with a fast prior to it. And so we can learn from the Bible what we need to do from a medical standpoint. We just have to be open to interpreting these things in that respect. And so irrespective of who I speak to, whether it's someone who's purely scientific and doesn't believe in God, or someone who's solely religious and has an issue with science, we can come to a middle ground, and I can help you either way. But we just have to, again, organize each other around that mission.
I appreciate it. And listen, I intend for us to be part of your Philly roots, and bringing Meta Roots back over here to Philadelphia, making it prevalent in Philadelphia. Dr. Hinton, again, I thank you for your time. I thank you for the conversation. I thank you for your knowledge and your willingness to share this information, because it's helpful to me, and I'm sure anyone who listens to it will be blessed by it as well.
I appreciate that.